No one remembered who he used to be. No one looked at him with respect. No one reached out when he fell. That night, he stumbled through the rain, no wallet, phone, or name. People walked past him like he was trash on the sidewalk. Someone looked at him, pulled out a coin and threw it straight at his face. "Get out of the way, you piece of garbage." He froze. Not because of the words, but because they were the exact words he had thrown at someone else, just 7 days ago. He was still the CEO of a $500 million finance firm. And the homeless man he had insulted that day, I held him close tonight, keeping him warm so he wouldn't freeze to death. Nathan Hale, a name no one in the U.S. finance world could ignore. Wharton graduate. Former J.P. Morgan analyst. Founded Hale Capital at 35. 3 years later, he made the 40 under 40. 10 years in, he was hailed as the master of managing the unmanageable. But what truly made people fear him was his absolute coldness. His office sat atop a 62-story glass tower in the heart of Manhattan. Everything operated like an operating room, sterile, silent, and emotionless. No laughter, no drama, no personal life, and right outside that building sat a man. He didn't beg, he didn't speak, he didn't even look up. Just sat there, beside a worn-out canvas bag, a few old books, and a faded photograph. People called him Thomas. But to Nathan, he was one thing only: a stain on the city's image. No one knew just how deeply Nathan despised Thomas until that morning. Nathan was entering the building when he spotted a young female intern kneeling and handing Thomas a sandwich and water bottle. She smiled. Thomas nodded, not begging, just grateful. Nathan stopped. He didn't yell, he didn't scold me, he simply looked at the intern and asked, "Who hired you?" HR, through the scholarship program." I didn't ask why, I asked who is responsible. That afternoon, her internship was terminated. Reason: not a fit for the professional image management environment. No one said a word. Because everyone knew. Nathan didn't tolerate disruption, not even from kindness. 3 days later, he did something no one would ever forget. Early Monday morning, Thomas had fallen asleep near the building's steps. He wasn't begging or loud, just curled up like a silent ball of fabric. Nathan approached. Without hesitation, he kicked Thomas's bag, scattering its contents. A pair of torn shoes, a tin box, a notebook with a broken spine, and a photograph. He didn't look at the photo, just leaned in, close to Thomas's ear, and whispered, voice sharp as a blade, "I spend hundreds of thousands to keep this company's face clean, and you're the one thing that makes it dirty." Thomas didn't react. He just picked up his things, slowly, silently. No argument, no bitterness in his eyes, just the cold wind, the damp pavement. And something was breaking in the air that Nathan couldn't quite name. 3 days after the incident, rain fell steadily all afternoon. New York was swallowed by icy winds whipping through the streets like lashes. Nathan was still in a meeting on the 57th floor, eyes fixed on his smartwatch. He had a rare appointment, a sit-down with a visiting investor from Japan, known as the Silent Fund, willing to pour hundreds of millions into stable companies. The meeting was set at a restaurant just 15 minutes from the office. Nathan left the building alone, no assistant, no security. He preferred it that way. He believed true leaders should walk alone. He liked being in the driver's seat, the only place where he had complete control over speed and direction. But that night, New York didn't play by his rules. Halfway there, Nathan's car suddenly stalled. The dashboard lit up with an engine failure warning. He frowned and reached for his phone. Dead battery. He checked his pockets. No wallet, no ID, not even a coin. In his rush to leave, he left his wallet and power bank on his desk. The rain picked up, heavier now. Nathan tried to hail a cab, but it was peak hour. Pedestrians rushed toward the subway, raincoats flapping in the wind. He raised his hand, no one stopped. A group of teens passed by, eyeing him strangely. One whispered, "Yo, this old dude looks homeless." His shoes are soaked, too. Nathan walked to a nearby building, a bank branch he had once invested in. He knocked on the glass. The security guard inside shook his head and pointed to a sign, "Closed at 8 p.m." "I don't need to withdraw money, I just need to call a car." "No employee badge? No entry?" He turned and ran back to his company's headquarters. Stood under the awning and pressed the intercom. A voice crackled through the speaker. "Who are you?" "I'm Nathan Hale. I'm the CEO here." "Employee badge?" "I forgot it. Call Jeremy, head of security." "Sorry, protocol. No badge, no entry. We're not authorized to call personal numbers." Beep. The line went dead. Rain pounded harder. He stood there, drenched, staring at the building he used to command. No one saw him. No one opened the door. Nathan staggered to a nearby convenience store. The lights were warm. Music played softly inside. He tried the door, but a clerk blocked him. "Sorry, no loiterers allowed." "Loiterer? I'm no wallet, no ID, nothing to buy. Then you can't come in. Please move along." He turned away. Rain slid down the back of his collar. Cold, sharp. For the first time, Nathan shivered, really shivered. Not from the storm, but because he realized he was being shut out of a world he once controlled. The rain grew heavier. Nighttime New York no longer shimmered like the ads. Only streaks of red traffic lights smeared across the pavement, and the blaring of car horns screamed into the ears of the weary. Nathan was shivering uncontrollably. His shoes were soaked. His white dress shirt clung to his skin, frozen stiff. He sat down on a step near an alley between two buildings. For the first time in his life, a man who could once make a single phone call and shift the fate of an entire corporation, now couldn't call anyone. He looked at his hands, thin, veined, wet and cold, and realized they no longer had the strength to hold on to anything. A sports car cruised by. The driver, a young man, slowed, looked at Nathan, then sped off. Moments later, a middle-aged man walked past. Seeing Nathan, he stopped, reached into his pocket, pulled out a coin, tossed it near Nathan's feet and muttered, "Get out of the way, you piece of trash." Nathan froze. That line. It was precisely what he had said to Thomas the morning he kicked the homeless man's belongings across the pavement. He bowed his head, and for the first time in his adult life, his tears fell, unseen by anyone. The air grew colder. The wind sliced through the alleyway. The figures on the street blurred behind the curtain of rain. He felt himself fading, just like the people he'd spent his life ignoring. Every idea of success, power, status evaporated like the steam rising off his soaked coat. Then, footsteps. A silhouette stopped in front of him. No umbrella, no rush, just standing there, looking at him. No scorn, no pity, just looking. Nathan looked up. Through the blurry veil of rain, he saw Thomas. The homeless man stood before him, holding out an old coat. No reproach, no sarcasm, no, "Do you remember me?" No, "How does it feel now?" Just one sentence, soft as a mist. "For the first time, I met someone colder than me." Thomas sat down beside him, placed the coat gently over Nathan's shoulders, didn't touch him, didn't crowd him. Just pulled a plastic bag filled with dry kindling closer and lit a few scraps of newspaper. A small fire flickered in the cold alley. It lit the pale face of a once powerful CEO. It lit the quiet eyes of a man once humiliated by him, but now held no hatred. They sat there until morning, no more words, just the sound of rain, the wind, the soft crackling of burning paper, and the silence of forgiveness. The next morning, the first light of day poured into the alley, soaked in rain and scattered with trash. Nathan opened his eyes, dazed, as if waking from a long dream. And for a brief moment he couldn't remember who he was. He looked around, a crumbling wall, a bundle of old belongings, a puddle of rainwater, and the lingering scent of burning wood. Beside him, Thomas still sat, arms wrapped around his knees, eyes closed in quiet meditation. Neither of them spoke. There was no need. A distant car horn echoed from the main street. It was an SUV, his assistant Jeremy's, who had been searching for him since dawn, alerted by the company's emergency response team. The vehicle stopped. Jeremy jumped out, forehead drenched in sweat, eyes wide with shock. "Mr. Nathan, my God, everyone's been looking for you all night." Nathan stood up, not hurried, not frantic. He simply slipped off the coat Thomas had wrapped around him, folded it carefully, and placed it gently back into the man's lap, without a word. On the ride back to headquarters, Jeremy rambled on. "I'll have security investigate." "Who didn't let you into the office? Who failed to recognize you? This should never have happened." Nathan didn't respond. He stared out the window. On a street corner, another homeless man was slumped asleep, chin resting on his chest, the morning rain still clinging to his thin coat. Nathan saw himself in that man, shivering, alone, ignored, and this time he couldn't look away. When he returned to the office, he didn't take the private elevator like usual. He walked up to the 3rd floor, then the 4th, then the 5th. He passed open-plan workspaces, watched people typing, listened to the endless ringing of phones. Everything still ran perfectly, like a well-oiled machine, but he wasn't sure if it was counting the time of living or just counting down to quiet death. That afternoon, instead of attending the strategy meeting, Nathan asked the IT team to pull up the security footage from the day he drove Thomas away. They complied. On screen, he was striding forward, kicking the man's belongings, voice sharp with disdain, eyes ice cold. The room fell silent. Nathan said nothing. He just sat there, watching it over and over again, as if trying to carve each second of his cruelty into his memory. Long after everyone had left that night, he sat alone in his office. No overhead lights, only the glow from the screen. On the desk was a still image printed from the footage. Thomas bent over, picking up the photo that had fallen from his bag after Nathan's kick. This time, Nathan truly looked at the photo. A woman and a little girl, curly-haired, beaming, clinging tightly to her father's neck. The look in that photo's eyes made his whole body tremble. The next day, Nathan canceled all meetings. No prior notice, no explanatory email. He simply left a handwritten note for his assistant. "I'm stepping out. If anyone asks why, tell them I'm looking for what I lost." For the next 2 days, he walked the streets around the office, through every corner of every park, every relief shelter. Every makeshift tent was pitched beneath the bridges. No one knew who he was looking for. No one recognized him, no luxury suit, driver, or nameplate. And then, on the 3rd morning, he saw Thomas at a soup line near 9th Avenue. The man was wearing an apron, gently ladling porridge into paper bowls, quietly handing them to people in line, saying little with that same calm, steady gaze. Nathan didn't approach right away. He stood at a distance, just watching. As the line began to thin a few minutes later, he stepped forward, Thomas looked up at him. Not surprised, not avoiding eye contact, just looked, as if he had known this moment would come. Nathan stopped in front of the serving table. He didn't rush. He didn't lower his head. He simply spoke, deep voice, steady and slow. I came to say I'm sorry. Not because I lost my reputation, but because for the first time I realized I didn't deserve to be called human. Thomas looked at him for a few seconds. Then he silently pulled out a plastic chair beside him and motioned for Nathan to sit. No questions. No why now. No need for excuses, just acceptance. They sat side by side. No one is eating, no photos were taken, no live streams. At a long, makeshift wooden table, beside a steaming pot of soup, and the soft clinking of spoons against paper bowls, a man who once kicked over another's only meal now sat still, like someone relearning how to be human. Nathan was absent from the company from that day on for 3 weeks. Rumors swirled. He was taking a leave of absence, transferring power, maybe restructuring. No one knew he was volunteering daily at the shelter. No headlines, no company logo, no cameras. Just a man who once thought he could control the entire market. Now washing dishes and serving food with his hands, in simple clothes, with eyes that had finally learned to look downward. 3 months later, at a city press conference on community initiatives, a reporter raised their hand. Mr. Hale, what made someone who once called homelessness a social problem now create a charity called I Owe a Man? Nathan sat in silence. In front of him were dozens of cameras, microphones, lights, and expectant faces waiting for a polished PR soundbite. But he didn't look at the cameras. He looked at his own hands, the same hands that once held corporate power, signed $100 million deals, and kicked a homeless man's only belongings. Then he looked up. His eyes are no longer sharp. His voice was calm, but piercing. I used to think the homeless were society's failure, but that night I realized the absolute failure is how society decides who gets to be called human. Later, as the conference ended, Nathan quietly stepped into the lobby. A young staff member approached him, hesitant, careful. Sir, I was the intern who got dismissed for handing someone a sandwich. Nathan nodded. I remember. I just wanted to say thank you for changing. Nathan paused, turned to her. Number, thank you for being braver than I was that day. Just a man quietly walking out of a city center, not to abandon power, but to finally go where he should have gone long ago. Job titles do not measure people but by the weight of their hearts. If you've ever looked away from someone homeless, maybe pause for a second next time. You never know. They might be a father, a husband, or even a stranger who once saved someone else. If this story stirred something in you, share your thoughts in the comments. And if it touched even a corner of your heart, consider subscribing. Because some stories are meant to be heard.